Hey, everybody, here we are. We're getting going with Chaos and Company. The Fall Line podcast is back. And we have been doing some stuff over the summer, but not as much as we're going to be doing now. And we're starting season 2. This is episode 1. And we have Sue Kramer is here with us. And Sue is our examiner coach currently. She's also previously been our ACE team coach, which is the Advanced Children's Educator, and many other things in PSIA Aussie. And welcome, Sue.
Thank you. Great to see you guys.
Yeah. And of course, my partner's here, Angelo Ross, doing all the important stuff while I just sit here and ask questions.
What important? Yeah, because what important stuff do I do?
You keep me on track, man. Make sure I actually do the questions.
Oh my God. That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. So what's been going on, Sue? How has your summer been?
Summer has been fun, actually, different from last year, obviously getting out a little bit more. For fun, we've been doing a lot of mountain running and trail running. So it's been awesome, actually.
Cool. So you've been in the studio, I assume. I've got one here that I'm drinking out of now.
Yeah, I have been. I will be going back in there after this interview. So been doing a lot of plate orders and dinner sets for people, which it's been pretty cool.
Awesome. Yeah, because last year was difficult because you do most of your sales at farm stands and farm markets, right?
Yeah, I do. I was still able to reach out to people through, online stuff, and I still got some orders because everybody was stuck in their houses and they were like, I don't really like my old dishes that I got from my great grandmother. No offense, great grandma, but yeah.
Cool. Well, hey, we've got Sue here this morning to chat a little bit about some fitness stuff, some workout stuff. As many might know and some don't, Sue wrote an incredible book as she was going through her master's program, Be Fit to Ski. And it talks a lot about how to get ready for skiing, specific to skiing. And we wanted to have Sue on because a lot of you out there have been asking about some fitness stuff. So kind of my first question, Sue, is that many of the listeners are looking for more info and advice on their season fitness and workouts. I'd like to know how much your overall fitness comes from just your active lifestyle. I know you trail run, you like the mountain bike, hike. I know, is that the mainstay for your active outdoor life, or what else goes on?
Right now it is. Well, first of all, thanks for asking. And right now it is just because we like to be outside, right? The three of us know each other through skiing, and that's an outdoor sport, the obvious. I just like doing stuff outside. And as much as I have tried to be a gym person, I'm not. And I think my first job after college was working in a gym. I don't know if I had mentioned this before, but my job was to sell memberships, like through cold calls, here's the phone book, and just start making calls. And I don't know, I think you guys know me well enough to know that was the most awful thing for me to do.
I could see Angelo smiling right away when you said that you had to do cold calls. He's like, no way, Sue.
I was trying to not laugh.
It was terrible. So anyway, I did work out in a gym, but it just wasn't for me. But yeah, anything outside. So the thing is that now that it's September 1, I'm looking at my plans that I gave to some ladies, my whitetail ladies last year. And I'm thinking, okay, well, how far off am I by just doing what I've been doing outside? What do I need to catch up on? And there's definitely some, power related activities and some high burst, high intensity stuff that I need to just pick up. I need to do. So.
And, how much of your workouts are based around aerobic workouts? Like, I mean, do you focus on a big aerobic base of training? Because I know in your book, and it talks a lot about the anaerobic side of things, where skiing goes in that anaerobic mode. But I mean, how much of the base of your fitness is more of an aerobic piece?
Right now, it's pretty aerobic. It's been, like 80% aerobic for the last 5 months. But I don't think of that as a bad thing. And I don't think of it as a bad thing because, a lot of the research says that you still need that aerobic base in order to make really good gains in anaerobic. So it's more like if I continue down that road heading into the season, I'll probably suffer in some way. So this is kind of like a breaking point or a threshold where I need to start changing some things. But up to this point, it's been okay to have a largely aerobic, training plan.
So if someone hasn't done anything, which maybe we'll get some bad comments here, Angelo, but I know maybe even some of our listeners, and I know a lot of our members out there probably haven't done an aerobic style summer. And don't. And it's like September 1 and, the excitement starts and we start posting stuff. And I put one out there, a share from Blizzard about, I want to be in the powder. Why do we have to wait? I can't wait. I want it now. And, Jess joked, you're not ready yet. So what should some of our members do that haven't done much? Like how bad are they going to be off without that aerobic summer?
So this is where I think it gets pretty interesting. From my standpoint, is that you can still make gains to your aerobic capacity by doing some high intensity work. With that said, you don't want to like get off your couch, turn the remote off, or power down your TV, head out the door and start running up the hill, sprints. You don't want to do that, but you could start to do, if that's what you've been doing, if you've been doing nothing all summer, we'll go to the extreme. What's most important is to warm your body up because you're just not in the mode. So doing some brisk walking is good to loosen up your ankle joints, your knee joints, your hips, get the blood flowing to your muscles. A 10-minute warm up is really, really important. And then after that point, you could add like a light jog or a light cycle, or if you are inside, picking up some weights and just light weights and getting the joints to move, warming up. So I think that's a great thing to do on week 1, September 1 through September 7th, honestly, is warm up. And then light weights, do some squats, do some, upper body stuff. Plank, I know plank is, seems so ho-hum these days, but I'm a full believer in the plank. What do you think, Angelo?
Surprisingly, I do planks all the time.
Yeah.
And I think we've talked about this before, and we're kind of of the same mindset. I'm not a gym rat either. And even when I run or something like that, if I'm just doing a road run, I get bored. So I'll throw in burpees like on a road run. And I have a little loop that I do from the house here. And I have 3 spots on that run where I stop running and I do 10 burpees 3 times. So that's a great core exercise. But if I'll catch myself in the kitchen, standing there waiting for water to boil, like why not plank and wait for the water to boil? So I do quite a bit of them. That also comes last year. I think we talked about this on a couple of podcasts when I got hurt and worked with a few PTs to rehab. Margie King just said, do a bunch of planks, and that was after I healed and got to the point where my back could tolerate that. So I do it in an effort to not like fall back into that, the repercussions from that injury. Yes. So yes, planks.
Yep.
There it is. Everyone's got a plank.
Too. Like,
well, that makes me think of it's a Scandinavian exercise technique or method called fartlek, and I've mentioned it here and there in some stuff that I've put out there. It's basically you take like down in town we have our rec center has a mile-long loop walking track. And you could take that mile-long track and basically break it up into short sections so you can walk the first, what I like to do is from the starting point to that oak tree, or, from the oak tree to that park bench, or, just breaking it up in terms of distances. And you would do exactly what you're talking about. Angelo was like walk one part, then jog another part, then maybe sprint the next part. And maybe you do 20 jumping jacks at the swing set, or throw in 5 push-ups at the baseball field, that type of thing. And then, before you know it, you've been aerobic and anaerobic probably for certain portions of time. You've broken it up. It's not boring. You're outside, you're getting fresh air, and you're moving your body in different ways. That's all very applicable to skiing. Mm. So, and I would dare say that I think there's a fair number of us in ski instruction who have short attention spans. I'm not going to throw like diagnoses out, but for us,
I kind of feel like you throw them out all the time.
Oh, okay. All right. Speaking for myself, I get bored very easily. So that's the type of thing that works really well for me.
I think like that made me think that, Dave and I talk quite a bit. And one of the things that we talk about is how inconsistent we are with workout. And it's really not out of lack of desire. It's just, we both have a really, really crazy summer schedule. So you can't be consistent. And that's a real danger if you want to perform athletically. Inconsistency can be bad. But the flip side of that too, I think, is bad. When you're so consistent that you only do one thing, like I only run or I only go to the gym. Mm-hmm. And I know quite a few ski instructors who are training to be, they want to be up and comers and working on a plan to like get to their next level, and like with a 6-day gym routine. And I think that's fine, but if you don't mix it up, like you're saying, if you don't get creative and like move your body in different ways, you don't get to know your body. And then we here in clinics and on the hill and whatnot, like people have this kinesthetic unawareness, like this disconnect. Like, what do you feel? I don't know what I feel. Tell me what I'm supposed to feel. I don't know what you're supposed to feel. You got to tell me what you feel. But if you don't feel your body do things in different situations, you don't practice that skill. So that can be like working out is great, but you can take it to some extreme where it's not maybe harming you, but you're not benefiting in these other ways, like kinesthetic awareness.
Right. And so exactly to what you're saying, I've always liked to run. And yes, I've liked to road bike as well. But I think I told you guys that I had ridden my bike from Connecticut to Colorado, and then I didn't get on a bike for 10 years. So
a good experience.
I've always liked to run, but then had some back issues, and so was looking for some softer surfaces to run on, and started with trail running then, and have really just recently been thinking a lot about how seriously beneficial trail running is for what we do on snow. Because you talk about that person who's in the gym 6 days a week, great workouts, like probably ripping body, but the ground is always the same. Like the ground isn't moving underneath them. And, such a huge portion, like the benefit of trail running is just that is how changing, how variable the ground is underneath you. And so you're having to constantly readjust where your center of mass is over your base of support, constant. And I'm thinking about, like, just yesterday, when I went out, I'm making these minor adjustments to where my upper body is relative to my feet. It's pretty cool. And, from a psychological standpoint, you're completely present. There's like, you can't be thinking about other things when you're negotiating rocks and soft dirt and that sort of thing. And I can't talk about how beneficial it is enough.
Yeah, because that's one of the things that I'm going through your book is that you emphasized it a little bit in there, that we have to do things that make us move in 3 planes of space, because that's where we're moving. And the gym thing, you can do it a little bit, but it is, nothing's moving. The floor is the same. And, when I talk to a lot of the crew and a lot of our staff that are out doing stuff, most of the stuff we do, rollerblading, mountain biking, running, trail running, all this stuff tries to put us in a different mode of space. And also in there, it was neat, like looking through where you have those charts in the book of what different activities to do. You made sure that you had to work in all 3 planes, because that's where we're skiing. Is that like one of the magic bullets? Like, because people are looking for that, and I don't know if there's a magic bullet. I don't think there is a magic bullet. What's the best exercise? And to me, it sounds like, listen to you and everything that I've known so far, is that the magic bullet is move in all 3 planes and be versatile.
I think, it's a really good question. Magic bullet is having a plan. That's which doesn't really answer your question.
Well, I think it does. I like that answer.
Magic bullet is having a plan and trying to stick to it, or doing your best at sticking to it. So there's certainly great value in throwing weights around. There's huge value in it. For a certain part of the year. There's huge value on going out on a flat road and spinning for 2 hours. Huge value in hiking and trail running, or plyometrics. But I'm not going to set out on doing some box jumps in April. Yeah. I'll die. That's when you need to really recoup and allow your body some time to just rest and kind of deal with those aches and pains and that sort of thing. Sleep, we haven't talked about sleep. That's a big part of it too. So I think, like Angelo, you said your summer has been crazy. And is there a way that you can, if you reflect back on this past summer, is there a way that you could have done it a little bit better in giving yourself some sort of space, time to do something more for yourself?
Was that a direct question?
It is, yeah.
That you wanted me to answer?
I do.
Yeah, well, the answer is yes. And I did that. And I shifted gears about halfway through the summer and became much more purposeful. And it's funny you asked that, because I was just going to ask you. You said something a bit ago that made me think. I was going to ask you if you use a fitness watch, like while you're exercising. Do you keep track of things?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. So I bought a new watch this summer, and because I'm on these bicycle tours, they're a week long and it's chaotic. Like it's a typical day on a bicycle tour is 6 a.m. till 10 p.m. With guests, cleaning bikes, planning for the next day, grocery shopping, and it's anywhere from 4 to 6 or 7 days in a row like that. So it can be overwhelming if you let it. So I came up with a new plan in the summer, and part of it was to get this fitness watch to just sort of track what was going on with me and how many minutes did I work out this week, or how many minutes was I active this week, and that kind of thing. And the metrics that I found most interesting, and the ones that I'm keeping a track like keeping track of now. And I feel like I'm having a result. One is my stress level, and one is resting heart rate, and the other one is my sleep pattern. So like last night, you asked a question before we hit the record button here today. We went out to dinner last night, and I had a beer at dinner, and then when we got home, I had one, and that was it. Went to bed. And I woke up this morning, like feeling like I really didn't sleep that well. So I looked at the data from my sleep, and I had like 0 REM sleep last night. And I did a quick internet search, alcohol and sleeplessness. And the very first thing that popped up was how alcohol suppresses REM sleep. And like, I looked at my previous week where I didn't have anything to drink, and I had all these great nights of sleep, So that's a long way, that's a long way of answering your question. Yes, I did make changes to become more purposeful, but the things that I'm learning about myself, those are the benefits, like specific to me. And I'm interested moving forward. Like if I don't have any drinks this week and I look at my REM sleep for the upcoming week, is it going to be better than it was last night? And if the answer is yes, then there's a pattern, and it's worth going with. But it takes a certain amount of commitment to look at that stuff. Part of your planning statement.
You had 0 minutes last night at REM? 0?
Yeah, 0 minutes. And I totally feel it today.
I had an hour and 49 minutes, man.
Did you?
Crushed you. Yeah.
Crushed me.
And we're going to be even competitive about how much REM sleep we get.
I can't sleep. I can't sleep with the watch because I wake up and I look at it. How am I doing? How am I doing? The first time I had this Fitbit to measure sleep, it showed. I think that was a problem. I was up 17 times. It's like, no, I'm like, ignorance is bliss.
Oh, must be the geekiness in Angelo and I looking at the watch. How many minutes of REM sleep did we get?
Yeah.
But I will say that about 8 years ago, 2008, we got a Tempur-Pedic mattress, and it was touted as being amazing, right, for sleep, and it turned out to not be all that great for me personally. It was too soft. And so just this morning, I woke up, so we got a new mattress, much more firm. And when I woke up this morning, I felt like my muscles actually recovered overnight because I wasn't trying to literally hold myself up from the softness of the foam. And, that could take this conversation in a whole new direction. But I just think it's interesting. We're talking about all these things outside of our bodies, like a watch, a mattress. It could be, the amount of light, like the lights that you have from your TV glowing in your bedroom, like all these things disrupt the amount of time that you give yourself to rest. And how can we optimize, our rest? Because that's such a huge part of the periodization, the plan, right? So sleep is definitely part of it, and pay a little closer attention to how you can do that better, even if you have to compete with your friends.
We have to. Is there a REM sleep feature on Strava? Because I'm not on Strava, but if there's that, I'll get on there and fight you every night for
I haven't
REM sleep supremacy. Another thing with the planning, and this is kind of outside too. It's not a piece of gear. It's not an external thing, but I had a really great conversation the other day with a friend of mine who's a skier. He's an avid skier. He's not a ski pro. He's a pass holder. Very curious guy, philosophy professor that I have known for a long, long time. And he asks great questions about skiing. but he doesn't look at it the same way we do. Like there's a difference in the way we go about it. And he said to me, each of us skis for our own reasons, you know. And I think that's important when you're talking about exercise and when you're talking about planning. Like, why do you do it in the first place? Why do you ski? Like, ever really thought about how you would answer that question if somebody asked you? Because you could quit. Like, you don't have to do it. But why do you do it? What brings you to it? You know? And there are different, like I started thinking about what he said, and I'm like, okay, yeah, there are gearheads and there are hammerheads. All they worry about is the perfect carve, or I have to beat my friends in the NASCAR course. And then there's the performance artists like the Marcus Castons who just kind of express themselves through it. But and the weekend warriors and the people who are totally content showing up on Saturday and Sunday and teaching a couple of lessons just because they love passing it along to little kids. And you need to frame your plan within those boundaries that make sense for you. But sometimes I think we present it to instructors in particular, like, here's what you got. You got to do planks. You got to be able to run this far, this fast. You have to be able to do this many jumping jacks or whatever it is, but that's not for everybody. It doesn't make sense for everybody. It's not going to turn everybody on. And I think that framing is important. It's important to understand like what your goals are. What's your mission statement? And then come up with your plan and your exercises.
My mission statement is have the most fun possible. and not get crushed at training like we did a few years ago when we had to do hop turns all day the first day we were on snow.
That wasn't me.
I know it was not you. That was a different coach, different, he's still around.
Yeah. But that's not to say that we wouldn't do that.
Oh man, not the first day, coach. Come on.
No. Leg day.
No.
I remember we did that on Monday when the crew came in, who's going to lead groups of training, and we hopped all day long. And I mean, you get there. I hadn't even skied yet. I think I was like the only one that hadn't even made a turn yet. Put my skis on. I don't know. Luckily, they might have been waxed. And we went all day. And I wasn't staying for management seminar. I went home for the 2 days. Thank God I couldn't walk. And I got back on Thursday for training. And I don't know if it was a breakfast or lunch. It might have been after the day of training. And I was talking to Kathy. And I had to ask, I said, Kathy, were you sore after Monday? And she kind of looked at me, didn't want to answer. And I just said, I was. I said, I still am. She said, oh my God, so was I. I mean, she had to go out and do exam tasks or management seminar. I'm like, and that's what went around. It wasn't just the two of us. I mean, people were sore after that. The crew that was there, that was brutal. And I know Matt, Jeb, and Terry are going to laugh at us, but I don't care. Man, I was hurting.
Yeah, they were hurting too. They just didn't say anything.
Yeah. Oh man. So we should chat because you mentioned it, the periodization and relating to the book, because I think there's a connection there that I wanted to ask you that you talk a lot and have the phases of the periodization, coming off the season, postseason, going into starting to prep. And it's like is it a 4 or 5 part periodization you put together there before I mess it up?
Well, there's usually there's four parts that you can kind of divide the year up into, if that's what you're asking. Yes.
Yeah. So when we look at those 4 phases, and then you look at your book, like a lot of people looked at your book when it first came out. I know even Ed staff, and we're like, wow, this is elite, which it is. I mean, it really looks at elite athletes and how to do that. But as I've gone through it more than once, I feel that I could take any one of our members and you might scale down the reps or you scale down some of the intensity, that any one of our members or anybody that's just coming to skiing could use the periodization and use your book to be able to get ready for skiing. Would you agree? I
would. Well, of course I'm going to agree.
I would hope so. But I mean, can you explain a little bit how they can do that? Because it is amazing. I mean, a World Cup athlete could pick up your book and look at those things. And that's what they're doing. If you look at YouTube, a lot of the activities and exercises in there, they're doing those.
So one of the things I had tried to do was to gather, my approach to it was there's so many different sources of information on fitness, fitness for skiing, for alpine skiing. And it's here, it's there, it's just in little pieces. And so part of my intention for the book was to gather all that information and have it in one place. And so in the last chapter, with all those charts, I admit it can be intimidating because it's, but if you're a spreadsheet kind of person, you'll probably really appreciate how it's organized. Within each of the weeks, there's a plan for, a beginner, intermediate, and advanced athlete. Because when you go through a lot of the studies and you look at who the subjects are, oftentimes it's on elite athletes, but sometimes it's on untrained people, and that's just as valuable. Or it's on recreational skiers. So our group of our membership is all of that. Our membership includes professional athletes. It includes recreational, untrained, work out 2-3 times a week, everybody. So I had to make it, applicable for everybody. You just have to kind of find out where your profile fits in and what your goals are. So, if you're a novice starting out and you want to become an advanced, you got a lot of work to do. Like, there's no easy way to get from point A to point Z without all the letters in between, right? You just got to do it. But I'm going off of I think that most of our members are in that middle place where they are active. So intermediate. And, one of the things they talk about in periodization is it's not just a science, it's an art. And so I can give both of you guys a plan and you can follow it to a T, and you can come back to me, Dave, you can come back to me and say, Sue, I did it. I feel like, I don't feel so great. And we would scale it, we would adjust it for you. So unless you start trying some of the things, you're not going to know what is, you're not going to know what's too much and what's too little, if that makes sense. I will say that for some of the strength building exercises, I do talk about the health benefit, and I mean physiological benefit of starting out with a trainer, because it's going to create a safe way to find out what your maximum amount is that you can lift, for example. And I feel like the best way to do that is with somebody else who can, load you progressively to your maximum. Because I think a lot of us are like, I'll take myself, for example. I haven't picked up a weight in a while. So me being me, I'll go for the 100-pounder. That's what I would do. And then
hammerhead.
Yeah.
Angelo and I can barely lift the bar, man. We go for the bar. We don't go for the weights. Listen to her.
Exactly. Underneath this sweatshirt is like a chicken wing arm.
That's a handsome sweatshirt, though.
It is.
I bet you can still outlift us, though, Angelo.
Right.
I mean, Angelo and I were joking the day because he was like, we were joking, he's in the gym. You actually sent a picture of you in the gym with the weights, Angelo.
I joined a gym.
So my point being is that there's a place and time for a gym, and I think it's because you have to your availability so many different increments of weights, different machines, and that is a good place to experiment and to discover what your baselines are. And then you can go from there, and then you can start playing around with the art of it. But you got to figure out, like, what's your baseline?
Yeah.
And I'm really glad you just said the word experiment, because I was going to say that and bring up the fact that, like, what I see, because this all then has to carry out onto the ski hill, or snowboard hill, whichever. We've talked about this on the podcast before when we had Eric Lipton on. There are some mindsets among instructors in particular. It occurs, I think, right around that moment. And I'm sure you see this all the time with new instructors. They'll be on staff for a couple of weeks and all of a sudden go, oh my God, I never knew how much there was to know. Like you've heard people say that, right? And they begin this process of dissecting this performance. And I think people take one of two directions then. And they either become experimental, like an Eric Lipton. We asked Eric when he began to experiment. He said he took notes from the time he was a kid. And he would experiment on his own. He's 16 years old, junior instructor. He's taken notes on his own, coming up with his observations and then running them by his coaches and mentors. And like, this is what I'm experiencing. Do you have any input? And then he'd go back out on his own and work more. So you have that mindset, but then you have the people who are seeking justification. Am I doing it right? Mm-hmm. What should I feel? And if you're still in that seeking justification mindset, all the workout stuff, the planning isn't going to be as effective as it could be if you switched gears into a real experimental mode on the hill. And rather than seeking answers and trying to find the magic bullet on the hill, it's like going out by yourself and trying different stuff on your gear, on your skis or snowboard, and doing what Eric did. And I think if you marry those two things, you'd probably find progress a lot faster.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. You know, there's a couple of thoughts that I had while you were talking, and one of them was just
please stop talking.
No.
Was that one of your thoughts? Dave, that's
no, it was great. I've just been listening to a lot of interviews from some of these world, the elite ultra runners and climbers, and a couple of things that have come up in their conversations is just that how they really started becoming who they are at such a young age. These are people who were introduced to mountains, as young children. And so they're, you think about being a child in an outdoor environment, it's all experimentation. It's all learning through play, and through that, what they do becomes second nature. I also was thinking about some kids that I've coached, race training, and it's especially in, almost all the kids, athletes, race training, they come down through a course. They're looking at you for feedback every single time. Every single time they want feedback. And there's always a particular point in the season where I say to them, why don't you tell me? I need to start training. We need to start training them to become better coaches for themselves. But to your point, is to becoming more intuitive, to feel a little bit more, to pay more attention to what's happening to their own feet at certain points in the course, at certain terrain changes or offset changes and that stuff. They're the ones who are doing it. I'm only watching it. And how can we be better? And maybe this is a challenge for all of us and anybody who's listening, is how can we get better at either coaching our students to be better coaches, or if we're training for something higher, how can we be better ourselves at self-coaching? What do we need to do? And, you talked about Eric Lipton and the conversations. I have stacks of notebooks scattered in various corners of my house, which I don't know what to do with, because it's all handwritten. It's all about skiing, ski teaching. It's how to perform better, how to do tasks better, how to handle teaching situations better. It's what solutions I use for what situations. It's all this stuff. It's, and I know Pete Howard he carries a notebook every year. It's just we can do better. We can do better at self-coaching for everything. What do you think?
That's been kind of a theme. Wouldn't you say, Angelo, that we've been having on the podcast from a lot of the folks we have on, our high level coaches in our organization?
Well, yeah, I mean,
they
with like
reach
Rogan,
their levels.
Rogan with the ski poles.
Yeah, page 46.
What a can of worms the ski pole thing is, and it was just like all he was doing was messing around, seeing how it affected his skiing, and it sort of became dogmatic when people saw that his poles were shorter, but he was like, at the same time, he had been skiing with them really long too. Just, I guess nobody saw that, or we'd all be like standing like, armpit cross country ski pole sizing again. But yeah, you have to be autonomous to a degree, and I would say to a large degree. There's a lot of value in learning the basics and then tuning everybody else out for a while, and doing your own thing. That's how art is made. It's really super cool to know all these different ways to use this brush. But if all you do is look on Google Images and copy what other people are painting, that's not art. It's just copying what other people are painting. It's fine to practice the tutorial on how to learn the brush and then shut your Wi-Fi off for 3 months and go paint, but we don't do that in the gym. We don't do that on the ski hill. We get so regimented and like formulaic and quantitative, I think, at the expense of quality. That's what I see. It makes sense because, our organization does offer an exam, like a certification process. So when people are chasing that, it does get very quantitative. But I don't know, man. Skiing looks a lot better when it's stylish. And that's my opinion.
Yeah.
It's one
stylish this winter in your new gear.
Well, I bought a new kit. Yeah, I'm going to look nice. Hopefully ski well. But like, that's the point. Like you can go to the gym and do 100 perfect biceps curls, like textbook perfect. But can you run through the woods and jump up and grab onto an irregular shaped tree branch and then bust out, 6 goofy ass looking pull-ups on something that's not a symmetrical bar, because that is transferable,
So speaking of that, like I said, I've been doing a lot of running, and for upper body stuff, yes, I was doing bicep curls, bicep to overhead press, ho hum, ho hum, ho hum, right? And it suddenly occurred to me, it's like, this doesn't actually mimic anything that I do. It doesn't.
Right.
And so I started to change up the weights a little lighter. And I was thinking for running, I'm gonna start moving the weights more like this to help me, to help my stride, especially when you're going up hills, you kind of need a little bit of momentum, a little bit of help from your upper body. So I'm going to start doing it more like this. Granted, you have to be mindful of your joints, which is why you'd go light on weights. I don't want anybody to be watching this and go like, oh, I'm going to take some, 30 pounders and start. Well, at least for me, that would be way too much. But, that's the kind of thing, or even, switching to winter stuff, throwing a bundle of gates over your shoulder. How heavy is a bundle of gates? Heavy, right? Heavy. And it's one-sided. You don't hold it like this, right? You're definitely not going to win street cred points if you hold a bundle like that. I mean, I don't know, whatever. Not where I am.
No.
Not where I am. So it's like, how much weight can I hold here like this? Hold it up, isometric. It's an isometric thing. And when we talk about fitness and training for skiing, there is that point where it becomes very specific. to the activity itself. Up to this point in the season, I'm kind of getting back to the periodization thing. Up to this point in the season, it's super important to like dip your toes into all different kinds of movement pools, working in the 3 planes. But at a certain point, you really need to start getting specific. And so I think at this point, kind of shifting the conversation a little bit for alpine skiing anyway, I know that I need to start loading like the lateral movements, those moving side to side. And because last year I was feeling a little, I use the word vulnerable. Like my lower back sometimes feels vulnerable in certain situations. And so I want to start doing some activities to really create better stability in my hip to spine joint to be able to handle the lateral loads that are placed on one side. So you talk about, Angelo, doing, was it burpees while you're cooking or planks while you're cooking? What do you do?
I do some burpees when I'm running, and I'll do some planks when I'm like in the kitchen cooking.
So I like to do one-footed stuff while I'm cooking or doing dishes, but I probably need to up that and start to add weights, like one-footed squats or with weight, or even side box jumps with weight, things like that. To just, you talk about stress. But stress is a good thing for our bodies as long as it's not too much. And so we need to start, we need to stress in small amounts so that when we come to big hills, icy stuff, bumps, we can handle the big loads of stress, in the short period of time. So I think that's going to be my focus for the next 3 months, is a little stress at a time.
It's interesting as you talk about self-coaching, and then you're looking at your own performance and, okay, what did I feel last year in the hill? Mm-hmm. And how do I add that in? And you're definitely putting it within the plan. And for me, one of the things that I feel I don't do enough of up to this point is my flexibility, getting on the roller. And I know during the season, I mean, Troy and I, we live with our rollers on the road. There's not a day that we don't hit the foam roller in the morning or end of the day, even after a few beers, which then it gets into that competition thing. And then we get some core strength, who can lay on the roller down the back and then lift one foot, lift both arms. And there's some falling around. We probably should have our helmets on when we do it. But, I think that's a big part of it that hopefully people will see that even though you have the plan needs to be for you. And there's specifics in there looking at skiing and what your performance is, where you need to focus. And, I think this is a great time. Like you're saying, this is the time that people hopefully have that active lifestyle. They have more cardio than they think. I think people work out, and our members work out more than they think. Just being out hiking, walking on the beach, moving around uneven stuff. We saw that in the fitness program last fall. Was it Dosh, who went down to the seashore and he was going around the rocks and that down on the water's edge or whatever. It was really cool. But for me, and how important is that, Sue? I mean, for me, I'll say, I think it's one of the biggest issues I see with our members and folks that I ski with, my staff, is their flexibility and mobility. Sometimes more than strength or endurance.
I would definitely agree that as we get older, it plays a bigger role than maximum strength or being super fit aerobically, even though that's still very important just for life. But flexibility, yeah. And I admit, I'm not doing as well in that area as I would like to be. I admit. And I definitely respond more when, that scale of 0 to 10, like how much pain do you feel?
Yeah.
I respond to that more than a regular routine of it. In other words, I'm not good at the daily stretch. I'm not. I go for a run and then I'm on to the next thing. So, and flexibility for me is more like taking a racquetball, squash a ball or a tennis ball and rolling my foot over it. There's lines of fascia, the connective tissue that a lot of it under your foot that come, if this is your foot, there's all the fascia that comes up under your heel and then going up your calf and up your backside. And there's lines of that all over your body. And if you think about connective tissue, it's like these are guy wires, and anytime there's tension there, it just transmit tension all the way up. And so I start with my feet, and you'd be surprised, like if you did that, you'd be surprised at how much more flexibility you'd feel in your hamstrings and your calves, where your hamstrings meet your glutes. Those are super important things. And just to stand, like I could actually be having this conversation while I've got my foot rolling over the ball and actually be doing something, beneficial.
Rather than talking to us.
Except that
Well, we all make choices in our lives.
Yeah, I have my balls for the foot because I had plantar fasciitis a couple of years ago, and oh my God, I couldn't. That first step in the morning was brutal. I didn't know what it was, and Margie set me straight. So yeah, they travel with me, and I'll rolling on them every night on the feet.
When I do the burpees on my run, I've also taught myself to stretch during the run. I watched a friend of mine 2 Memorial Days ago. We were skateboarding, and he, younger than me, early 30s, watched him tear his Achilles tendon. He just was pushing his skateboard, and he thought he hit a rock. He stopped dead, and it wasn't hitting a rock. It was on his pushing foot, his tendon burst, and it was devastating to his life. And I'm seeing that happen is like, oh my God. So I try to do that on the run too. Do the 10 burpees and then do downward dog for 15 or 20 seconds and just stretch things out. I've also taught myself to walk up and down steep hills. As I get older, like 15 years ago, I would purposefully try to run up and down those things. But as my SI joints became more damaged through time, and they get looser through time, and they don't stay in place as much as I wish they would, and you see people get hurt, like I've taught myself that for me, there are times when it makes sense to be in a running gait, and there are times when it's more beneficial to not be in a running gait. But again, that's learning yourself, and it's a hard conversation to have when you I think we're so wired to maybe not even wired. We're trained. We're so exposed to a training mindset. Like we used to mountain bike with a bunch of dudes, and one guy in particular, I would call them training rides, but we weren't training for anything. We weren't like getting ready for a mountain bike race. We're just out dorking around. But we hear training so much. I think that informs us to feel like we always need to be training. And then we push ourselves. And to me, I'll push myself to injury and then work through, like not rest enough and push through the injury, just make it worse. But getting to know yourself also, in my experience, has been like, when do I need to walk rather than run? When do I need to stop and stretch for a minute to make this run last, 2 miles longer than it will if I don't stop and stretch now? And that's all part of the process, I think, of getting to know yourself.
So it's interesting you say that, because part of my whole summer has been about learning what else is out there, specifically with mountain running ultra running, not that I'm doing ultras, but I have such admiration for people who do. And in listening to a lot of their interviews, it's so much about potential. It's so much about what limits we place on ourselves and also trying to push our limits. And so I think that kind of speaks to what you're talking about, Angelo, is that we're in this mindset of we want to push ourselves. That is one of the things that it's addictive about what we do, is pushing ourselves. But you can push yourselves in so many different ways. Like, is it more important to get to the top of the mountain as fast as you can, or just to the top of the mountain? Or maybe it's to do 2 peaks in one day. Doesn't matter how long it's going to take you, but just to go a little bit longer, than to get there as fast as possible, or to get there beating this other, your buddy. Who are you ultimately competing with? You're competing with yourself. And I think it's deciding in what way do you want to push yourself? These ultra marathoners are, they're staying up for like days on end. Talk about sleep. There is no sleep. They're sleeping for like literally 10 seconds and getting up and running another marathon. Like, that's insane to me. I don't have a desire to do that. I really like to sleep. But, and also like you talk about zone intensity zones of training. You can't go in zone 5 for, miles and miles and miles. That's not what they're doing. And yet their aerobic capacity is huge. It's like off the charts. Right. But they're in lower zones. And so I think it kind of encompasses, like, this conversation encompasses so much. And we're talking about our own personal potential, finding it, pushing our limits, but also recognizing what kind of parameters we need to work within to keep ourselves safe, I guess. Safe and still upright.
So since you're the examiner coach, and we call it the examiner coach, the ex-coach, but you also work with the other coaches, the dev team, the ACE team coach. Who am I missing? ETS coach. How can I forget Troy? He makes the national team. I forget about him already. He doesn't talk to me anymore. No, he does. So, it's not like the question I wanted to ask you is, do you have some plans for the ed staff and looking at, maybe some off-snow training, physical training, or encouraging the ed staff? I mean, are there thoughts there of some avenues you may go, maybe not making us all do certain things, but I mean, is there thoughts in your head to improve the ed staff's performance through some of this off snow and maybe encouraging all of us or some of us to do certain things?
So it's funny you ask that question, because I've tried to put out, in terms of putting things out for the ed staff, I've tried to do it by the Friday of like the first week of the month. Yeah. So that would be this coming Friday. My goal is to submit a challenge to the ed staff along those lines. And Angelo had bugged me about it, I don't know, a month ago or so. You were doing something for your ski schools, your staff. And so I definitely do want to put something out there fitness wise for our staff. But part of, I think you guys know me well enough that I'm pretty respectful of everyone's personal life, private life, their own routines. And so I don't want to put pressure on people that will make them feel like they have to completely change their plan, right? Like if you're not into trail running, I'm not going to say, hey, do that. But what can I put out there that everybody can incorporate into what they're already doing? So that's what I'm going to be. But I also want to add something along the lines of mindfulness and training for that to be better focused. Because, what we do on the hill isn't just about skiing. It's also, at least for trainers, we're there, we're listening to people, right? We listen to people when we're at exams. We're listening to people when we're teaching. We're listening to each other. And like I said earlier, we also have like attention spans that are like everywhere. So can we get better at being a little bit more mindful, more focused? And so that's a challenge that I'm going to put out there.
I like it. I think the Ed Stuff group likes the challenge mode. Mm-hmm. We definitely kind of tend to be a competitive group, and we watch each other. I start feeling good.
Do you think so, Dave? You just called me out on how much REM sleep you got.
Yeah, I know.
You really think it's a competitive crew?
Oh yeah. Well, it's funny because I watch Jeff Stith on Strava, and there's no way. The only way I catch him is he hits a deer like he did on his bike a couple of weeks ago, and so he's out doing like 8-mile rides now at like 4 miles an hour on the road on his mountain bike, trying to get back on the bike, which he's doing well. But it's the only way I beat him on the bike. But you start feeling good. You get a few PRs, personal records. You're breaking on the bike and feeling good. And then I watch, this young guy that just made our dev team, Greg Dolbeck, do this like 200-mile ride around Lake Champlain with his buddies. And I'm going 200 miles, one ride all day, and I'm like, okay. That it kind of pushes you. It's like a challenge. It's like, okay, I know I'm not going to do the 200-mile ride, but what can I do? How can I challenge myself? So I think.
That's exactly it. It's what kind of time do you have to, I always ask people, what kind of time do you have to give it? Because that's where the reality, setting, we talk about working with our own staffs, and whenever we're goal setting, it's being realistic. We've got busy lives. And I hate to say it, but none of us are getting younger. So what's realistic? I know.
What is it? Angelo's hitting a big one this year. Oh yeah, big snow, baby. What's up right down there?
It's my birth month right now.
It's your birth month. Wow. Happy time.
He's less than a month from a century. Ooh. We're gonna expect some good burns down there. Big snow.
Half a century.
Half a century. Oh, you're not 100 yet? Come on, I thought you were getting 100.
No, despite all the gray.
Oh man, you're looking worse than I thought.
I just decided yesterday that I want to live to be 100 and have all of those years be really good quality years.
Yeah.
I set it out there, and I'm really putting it out there now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Both of our listeners are going to hold you accountable for that. And we haven't talked about. There you go. My watch called me a fat ass about 15 minutes ago. I said, move. You know what? We haven't even.
Don't you hate when it tells you that to move?
Yeah. Bastard. And we haven't even talked about hydration or food at all.
Right. Well, that means we get to have Sue back for another podcast.
Part 2.
So, but I do want to, before we leave, and I want to make sure you get in there. This is the gig. This is where I think our members and anybody that wants to get better for skiing needs to look at this book, Be Fit to Ski. Where can they get it, Sue? I know Amazon, right?
Amazon or through my website, befittosski.com. And if there's anybody watching this who has a school of people and they want a bunch of them, I can offer a really, really good discount on both.
And the one thing people are surprised by that when Chris and I do our in-person MA sessions, movement assessment and movement analysis sessions, I bring this as one of the books that for MA, and people go, well, it's a training thing. I'm like, yes, but this can, for me, I look at this and look through the stuff. It really describes how people move. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the drills and activities and the training stuff you have in there, it shows how we're moving and how the body moves. And I think this is also a tool for them to use for their movement assessment and movement analysis. Even though that's not what it was probably exactly written at, but you have in there, there are the test piece where you kind of see where you're at to see what body parts are moving, how much, mean, that is all part of that movement analysis to move it on snow. And I think that great resource that is underutilized by our folks. So hopefully they'll get it out there and jump on it. So on the website, be fit to ski. And also, if you got a big number, you want to get it for the staff or group of people, email Sue.
Yep.
So, anything else, Angelo, before we let Sue go? Because we don't want to do everything today, because then we won't be able to have her back.
No, just I mentioned it earlier in the podcast, and you've had a lot of time to think about it. Why do you guys ski?
I'll go for it. I mean, I ski because it's fun. I literally have a blast with the actual slipperiness of the snow and the playfulness, what the ski does in the snow, and how I can play with the ski on different snow surfaces, the challenge of it. I remember which I don't enjoy the snow surface, but being at Stratton, and it wasn't just Stratton that year. Everybody at that time was just slippery, so slippery. It was like worse than Superstar after the World Cup. And Brian Watley came in. I was frustrated. I couldn't hold on it. We were skiing the green stuff at the bottom. Watley comes in, Brian Watley, and he's like, that was kind of interesting for about 3 or 4 runs. It was a challenge to try to hold on it. Then he saw some of these little racer kids come by ripping it, and he gave up. He said, that's it. They were holding, I wasn't. He said, it wasn't fun anymore. But I mean, for me, it's that playfulness of the ski, how I can make the ski do things on the snow. To me, it's like a competition, how well I can make it grip. How you can keep it in contact with the bumps, or maybe try to do a lift and run where you never touch the bumps. But yeah, that's the exhilaration there. And then it's fun to share it, man. I mean, I think over the 30 years of teaching, it's awesome. That's like with the podcast. It's another venue to share the sport. I enjoy that.
I'm not gonna say as much, because I think Dave covered everything, but I will just say it's the dopamine effect. It makes me giddy. It makes me, there are certain conditions that I don't enjoy, but I'd always rather be doing that than anything else. Yeah. And there are certain conditions that literally are take me to a different place. Just, they're heavenly, right? I've never been to heaven. It's okay. Yeah. But I can't imagine if that's what it's about, then sure. I think it's all dopamine. Makes me feel awesome.
How about you, Angelo?
Well, those are both affective answers, which is what I expected. So the point I wanted to make is that I think your workout plan should have some affective aspect to it. Your fitness plan should have as much pleasure as you just described in the skiing. I do it because of what it feels like. And Dave, it's interesting. You took more of a tool usage. Your response was about tool usage, the ski on the snow. Yeah. I like to look at the terrain and I like to use it creatively. I think more in terms of my body rather than the gear. But that's it. I like to find weird, lumpy pitches and crooked side hills and big rollers that you come down the backside of, and just how much can you style and skid and just express yourself on those weird spots. That's why I do it. That's what I'm always looking for on the hill.
He's that skateboarder looking for the rail, looking for the wall to bang off.
Yeah, it is. It's a skate park. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and my training is, I feel somewhat a little bit, I don't want to say, I mean, it is kind of lucky for the ski part that a lot of my schedule that takes me away from training, it's still doing stuff that's active on the farm or moving, lifting, lugging, doing stuff, sweating. But then I do the biking, mountain biking and road biking for me are fun. And that's why I use them so much. And, but then I work in, like you're saying, Sue, I've texted you a couple of times last week or so that, I finally got into the anaerobic zone, and I find that more on my road bike. And I do watch that. I just try to kill myself on some of the hills, trying to push it out of that aerobic and the anaerobic zone. And I did that kind of because it was like, okay, when we were skiing the bump run, this is before I had any clue, I'm putting myself in the anaerobic zone. It was just like, all right, I got to think of that bump run when I get the heart rate up wicked high, when I start getting tired. So that's the hill climb. So I just kind of mimicked it around that, and then got lucky down the road when I learned more and listened to people like you that, hey, that actually kind of works.
Yeah, I think there's another part though, now that I'm been given like 10 more seconds to think about it. Yeah. Think about your question. There's that philosophy that when you're doing something that's risky and slightly dangerous, you feel more alive.
Yeah.
And I think that that's also a really big piece to it. So that's, your speed, your slipperiness, your how low to the ground, how low to the ground, how high off the ground, how much can you move? It's that kind of being on the edge of things that makes you feel alive. And that to me is also very intoxicating. And yeah, makes
awesome.
me want to keep doing it.
Thanks, Sue. Thanks for joining us again, and starting off the fall and starting off our new season 2 of the Fall Line with KS and Company. We're really excited. We started off with you, and I will do my homework next week for not just the challenge, but there was a few other homework assignments that were put out that I have to watch some videos and stuff. So I'll get on that next week, and I'm excited that you're coming to Big Snow with us. That's going to be fun. I'll be sending that out very shortly, the info on that. But thanks everybody out there for listening. Angelo, it's great to get season 2 going. Any parting words for the listeners before we go?
Nope. Thanks, Sue. It was great.
Thank you guys. Great to see you.
Thank you. Awesome. Get out there and do some stuff, folks, and start thinking about the final prep for skiing. It's coming soon.